Hello, hello, hello. Welcome back to yet another installment of Empowered Esquire TV. We're going to play around with some different, I guess you could say, perspectives here and see which one works. I kind of like that one, kind of, sort of. Anywho, welcome back. So, as you can see by the title, today's topic is the Dave Chappelle controversy. I have to start with my pleasantries and my misgivings and my announcements. So let's do that. As for the pleasantries, I would like to say I posted earlier today a little post in the community tab about just resting and self-love and the fact that I was taking some rest, was resting. And I want to say thank you so much to all of you who extended support and the fact that you all are just so understanding, right? Second thing now on the pleasantries. My allergies are all over the place. For what reason? I don't know. Who knows what causes these things. So I may clear my throat a bit. And I may have my water. I actually just have a bottle of water today, right? Nothing fancy. Okay, so that's the pleasantries, right? And now we are going to just dive right into it. We're not going to dilly dally very much, all right? So let's try yet another perspective. Let's see. Um, I'm okay with that one. I'm okay with it, but then again, it does feel like a little much. How about that? Right? We'll keep it simple. So let me say, yeah, Chappelle. I don't know why I said Chabelle. I don't know, but as you all know, I've been, taking my time and resting. And honestly, I'm still pretty tired. I could use 30 more years of rest, but a few days is all I have. Okay. Alrighty, so let me hop in the chat and say hello to everyone. Hello, Zen La. Hello, Man King, Doug, Lexi, Mara Sharice, Nappy Yankee. Hello to all of you. And thank you so much for the compliments in the chat. Thank you, Zen La, for your wonderful compliment. I'm not on my cell phone, so I'm not going to be able to pin a comment, but we will just do this. We'll just do show, right? Perfect. And then you can see it. Okay. So, for those of you who've been living under a rock, Dave Chappelle released what I believe is his last stand up special on Netflix, and it is so appropriately called The Last Stand. Now, I don't know if everyone here has seen it, but I actually watched the special in its entirety, right? So I have actually seen the special. So we'll start there. If you saw Dave Chappelle's special, The Last Stand, meaning you actually watched it. So let me be clear, not that you saw snippets, not that you've heard things secondhand, but if you actually watched the special, put a Y in the chat. If you actually saw the entire special. Side note, as Mac emerges from the bedroom, which, my bedroom, which Mac thinks is his bedroom, giving me a look because apparently I'm disturbing him making noise, on this YouTube live stuff. Okay, so most of you saw it. Alrighty, awesome, awesome. Okay, so the big controversy is that Dave Chappelle said, as you all know because you watched the special, quite a few things that are very, very, some would say bold, right? Others would say offensive. Really? Did I break the cardinal rule of not having my phone on silent? Wow. You all, this is how you know I'm still tired. Listen, I'm still tired, but we're rolling. So, um, first thing that he said that was controversial. What is Mac doing? You all, I'm so distracted by Mac today because he is acting, he's eating something. I have no idea what he's eating or where he got it from. Come here, Mac. What was that? What were you eating? Alrighty. So the first thing that Dave Chappelle said that was bold slash controversial, right? Slash offensive to some. He insinuated that one would be taken one would be taken more lightly if you were to say something offensive towards African Americans and or black people than if you were to say something offensive towards the LGBTQIA community, right? So that was one thing that he said that was like, whoa, that's a step up. He went pretty far. But there were also some other things that he said. There were a few jokes in there about the M word. I'm not going to say it, but I will type it in the chat. No, I can't type it in the chat either. There were a few jokes in there about S abuse, you know, about the M word and other things like that that were also really, I mean, he took it, he in the special, he says, I'm going all the way. And boy, did he. I mean, he really went all the way with a lot of very, very controversial statements. So if you haven't seen the special and you want some background, go ahead and check it out so you can have all the background that you need. But we are going to talk about the fallout post special. Now, after the special aired, a lot of people were extremely outraged. Many celebrities called for Dave Chappelle to be canceled. And many Netflix employees actually stood up to Netflix saying, you know, I don't agree with this and I'd like something to be done about this, right? So that's really what we're going to discuss because listen, the societal conversation of whether or not Dave Chappelle should be canceled, that's really just back and forth banter, right? But the legality lies within the employees of Netflix who are staging walkouts because they are upset, who are boycotting their own company, right? And some of whom are being either suspended and or terminated for their behavior. That is the crux of what we're going to discuss because that's where the law gets implicated, right? So we're going to talk about being an employee, right? What are your rights as an employee? And we are going to discuss wrongful termination. So when can an employee say, hey, I was reprimanded or I was fired and it was wrong. It wasn't legal. I should not have been. Okay. So before we get into that, I am going to queue up a few thought provoking articles that I would like to share with you all. So let me pull up the first one. It's actually a New York Times article. Oh, it's taking its sweet old time coming up. I don't know why. All righty. Perfect. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. All right, perfect. So here we are. So this is the New York Times article. Something is happening. What is happening? Really? Now you want to, because I'm on a different browser. So now it wants me to log in again. Oh boy. Okay. One moment to deal with this. Never a dull moment when you're dealing with technology, right? Never a dull moment. All right. Let's try that again, shall we? All right. So we are here on USA Today. And the title of the article is Laughing in the Face of Our Pain. Netflix employees walk out over Dave Chappelle special. Yet another ad. Netflix employees made good on a promise to walk out Wednesday over a Dave Chappelle special. Over Dave Chappelle's transphobic remarks. Is it okay to use that word? I don't even know. In his new stand-up special, a gesture that was amplified by emotional pleas from supporters who rallied outside company headquarters. So, what are we hearing? First of all, there was a protest outside of Netflix headquarters, right? And then we had some employees who walked out. So Netflix had employees actually take action. Okay. Netflix's transgender employees say executives at the streaming service dismissed their concerns that Chappelle's controversial comments in The Closer, it's called The Closer. Why did I call it what I called it? I don't know, but it's called The Closer, could lead to violence against the trans community. The first person to address the crowd of about 150 gathered near Netflix's Hollywood offices was rally organizer Ashley Marie Preston, who said she and other members of the community had invited Chappelle on multiple occasions to have transformative dialogue, but he has made it clear that it is not of interest to him. Preston also accused Netflix, which has repeatedly supported the comedian in recent days, of making money off of our inability to understand intersectionality. Aha. So let's have a teaching moment, shall we? So I hear you thinking, what is intersectionality, right? Yeah, I can hear your thoughts, right? Having a Professor X moment. So allow me to, oh, I'm supposed to say anti alphabet. Okay, thank you, Nappy Yankee. So allow me to enlighten you on what intersectionality is. So, intersectionality, which was created by a theorist named Kimberly Cullen. You know, I like to fact check myself. So let's do. You're going to hear me quickly clacking on the keyboard because we're going to fact check ourselves. Kimberly Crenshaw. There you go. So intersectionality was a term coined by a woman named Kimberly Crenshaw, and intersectionality denotes that people, and the identities of each person does not exist within a vacuum. So it's the idea that someone who is a person with disabilities isn't just a person with disabilities. It's the idea that there are different groups of oppressed people, which one person can be a part of all at once, meaning one person can be the intersection of many, many different groups of oppressed people. Case in point, a person named Dan, right, is a gay, Black man with disabilities. So now you have that he's a part of the group of people with disabilities, right? You have that he's a part of the community, if you will, right? Because he's a gay man, and then you also have that he's a Black or African American man. So he is a part of three groups that have been historically marginalized and who some would consider to be oppressed. So that is the illustration of intersectionality. Now, for example, take someone like me, right? I am a Black woman. So that means just by what I just told you, I am a part of two groups who have been historically marginalized and who some would say are oppressed, right? One, women. Two, Black or African American people. So that's intersectionality. Okay. All right, so we are going to get back into our article here. Now that we all know what intersectionality is, okay? So Preston is accusing Netflix of making money off of our inability to understand intersectionality. I I honestly am not sure what she means by that. Okay. The group's list of demands presented to Netflix executives include making long-term investments in content from I'm told I can't say that word, non binary and BIPOC creators, fully inclusive spaces for blank and blank employees, and accountability when content causes harm. So now I see what Preston is getting at. Okay. So if you were like me and you were a bit lost and you were thinking intersectionality, how is she weaving that into allow me? So remember, Dave Chappelle said that it is easier, right, to get away with criticizing an African American person or harming an African American or Black person than it is to get away with criticizing or harming a person that is from the alphabet community, right? Okay. So, what I think Miss Preston is getting at is that that statement in and of itself does not take intersectionality into account, right? Because that means you're not considering that someone could be Black and a part of the alphabet community at the same time. Intersectionality. So that is what Preston is accusing Dave Chappelle of doing, pretty much of edging out people who exist within intersectionality, and Netflix is allegedly supporting that, right? That's what she's saying. Okay. Now, at the rally, David Huggard Jr., who was a contestant known as Eureka on, one moment, everyone. Okay. At the rally, David Huggard Jr., who was a contestant known as Eureka on RuPaul's Race, Drag Race, said those who enjoy Chappelle's special are laughing in the face of our pain. Hmm. During those speeches, a counter protester, who, in contrast to most protesters, did not wear a mask, shouted, "I'm just here for the jokes," and held a Heim. Can you all tell that I'm still tired? You don't, the level of exhausted that I'm at, y'all, I don't even know if it's a real thing. And held a sign that said, "Dave is funny" on one side and "We like jokes" on the other. A scuffle ensued, which resulted in someone breaking the sign. Okay, so it sounds like they even were fighting during this protest. Okay. Another counter protester, comedian Dick Masterson, said he attended the rally to support Dave Chappelle's statement against cancel culture. Okay, so a lot of people were saying, I'm really just in support of him saying that cancel culture is stifling to artists because artists are unable to express their art without being concerned about cancel culture. There's a big problem when people start tying speech to violence because it is not, he said. In this country, any speech is allowed, and violence is a hard no. There's a big canyon between those two. Okay, so I'm going to hop back in the chat for a moment and I'm going to ask you. So, what say you, my lovely participants in the chat? Do you think that Dave Chappelle was within his rights as, an American with freedom of speech? And that he told some jokes, and if you think they're funny, you think they're funny. If you don't, they don't. But he did not do anything that should warrant him to be apologetic, right? If you think that, put a one in the chat. So if you think that Dave Chappelle did not do anything that should warrant him being apologetic and that what he said is within his freedom of speech, put a one in the chat. Put a two in the chat if you think that Dave Chappelle went too far and that what he said was offensive and that he has in fact done something that he should issue an apology for. So one in the chat if you think, hey, Dave Chappelle has freedom of speech, he made some jokes. Two, if you think, no, this is a problem and he should be apologetic about this. In the meantime, I'm going to say hello to some people I haven't said hi to yet. Hello to Amare Shager. Hello to Health Light. Hello to the beautiful Bernice. Hello to Thomas Smith. Hello to Nakrum. Oh, you guys, I'm still tired. Hello to Krumatore. Krumature. Forgive me today. Hello to Lexi. Hello, Teddy Woodson. Hello, Jesus Price. Hello, Nappy Yankee. All right. I think I got everyone. Hi, Miss Down South. Already. So it looks like most people think that he was within his freedom of speech. He made some jokes. If you think it's funny, you think it's funny. If you don't, you don't, And so here's the thing. As we all know, legally, Netflix can put whatever content they want to put on their platform, right? I think we all understand that from a legal perspective, there's no legal reason for Netflix to have to take down that special. So that's not even a conversation, right? What we're talking about is more so of a personal opinion. Hello to Diva Divine Light. Hello to Jamar. Hello to Spot'em Shot'em. Hello to, already said hi to Health Light. Okay. So now that we know kind of the whole circumstances surrounding everything, we know there was a big protest, we know all these things. The question becomes, so what happened to these employees who protested, right? So the information that we have is that there were employees who were suspended based upon participating in this protest. Now, I heard some rumors that, employees were fired. I haven't seen that. I've only seen suspended, right? But either way, we're going to address that. We're going to talk about, let's say they are fired, right? Is that legal or is that illegal? Okay. So let's first start with the conversation about being an employee of a private company, right? Okay. So not a government employee, right? So being an employee and also what comes along with being an employee. Okay. All right, before we hop into that, I'm just going to highlight some comments. Zen La made the point of saying that she doesn't think that Dave Chappelle broke any laws in his special, which correct. But just that some people's feelings were hurt by what he said. Okay. And hello to Jamar. All righty. Okay, so let's get back into it, shall we? Let's first start with being an employee and the rules and regulations that come along with being an employee. Now, if you are a newbie here, welcome. If you are an OG, what's up, right? If you're an OG, then you're aware of the fact that we have discussed being an employee on this channel before. So it's not totally new, right? We had a conversation in which we brought on K Business Podcast. He's an awesome You see why I said I'm so tired? I think we're gonna start doing some like chit chat videos where we just sit and talk because sometimes I'm just like, right. So I already did a video about being an entrepreneur versus being an employee, right? And we talked about the Stephen A. Smith mindset versus the Kwame Brown mindset. And I had K Business Podcast, who has an entire business channel here on YouTube, come on and talk about that. So if you're a newbie, you should check that out because we really get into detail about the differences between being an employee and being an entrepreneur. But now for this purpose, right? Let's say, for example, I'll just use someone's name from the chat, right? Of course, all in jest. Lexi, right? Let's say, Lexi, you were an employee of Netflix. Now, when you were hired by Netflix, right, something would occur which is called your onboarding process. Okay, so for those of you who you've never heard that term before, your onboarding process is that day one, right? It's the first day. You come into the company. Usually, what will happen is you are given a stack of paperwork that is yay thick, right? It's ridiculous. And you give them all the information about yourself. You tell them, everything you've ever done in life. And then they also give you a stack of papers which tells you about the benefits, about the facility. It gives you your job description, right? But guess what is usually also in there? There is something else that is usually in onboarding packets that people usually don't pay any attention to. They just go, well, and they skip past it and whatever, right? Because they're just so excited to have a job. What is usually in, and last live, we had an actual winner for one of my little questions, and you do get a prize. I won't say what it is on live because then it ruins it for people, right? Oh, Zenla already got it. So there are rules and regulations, which can also be called an employee code of conduct. Okay, so let me put that up here. So Zenla, you're the winner. Email me, Zenla, for your prize. Okay. Employee code of conduct. So within that thick, slab of documents, usually you're given an employee code of conduct. It has rules and regulations for employees. Most people do not read it, although you should. Most people do not read it, right? They just kind of skim past it and then, you guys know that meme where the guy's like throwing the paper over his shoulder? That's most people with employee code of conduct, right? They're just like, nah. You should read it though, because it's very likely that Netflix has within their code of conduct that employees are not permitted to either A, take this type of action, meaning walk out or protest Netflix content, and also B, that employees do not have any control over what is chosen to be content. So now the biggest thing about this employee code of conduct is not just that it's a list of rules and legalese and gobbledygook, right? It is so important because an employee code of conduct is a contract. It's a contract. And so for those of you who, contracts is just legalese to you, right? Let us walk down the path together. And in the meantime, I will give you a little anecdote about my law school experience. So, everyone, my contracts professor My contracts professor, as you can see, still having a hard time with the words. The words are a hard thing for me because I'm still exhausted. My contracts professor was infamous. And I say infamous because she had a reputation for being very, very serious. I mean, she was no joke. People would try to get out of having her class. Mind you, you have to take the class, but they would try to get a different professor, like, oh, can I, and they would try to wheel and deal, and it just never really worked out, right? So uh, I had a contract professor that was very serious about contracts and about the UCC. And because of that, you know what? I'm glad because of that, I have an understanding of the essence of contracts, even though contracts weren't something that I started practicing right out of law school, right? Right out of law school, I went into the criminal side of law. But that knowledge of contracts never left because that professor was no joke. And I had to have that information so deeply ingrained that it's a part of me now, right? Um, I heard a joke. Well, this isn't a joke. I heard a story. My first day of her class, I heard a story from a classmate. You know how classmates tell each other folklore, that she called on someone once. And in law school, it's called being cold called. So you don't know when you're going to be called. And I heard a story that she called on someone once and they became so afraid because they did not know the answer that they literally almost threw up on themselves and had to run out of the class. Yeah. So let's talk about why an employee code of conduct is a contract. Here is why. Netflix is saying to Lexi, right? Only because we're using you as an example, Lexi, right? We love you. Netflix is saying to Lexi, we are hiring you, Lexi, as an employee. But in exchange, right? We will pay you this amount for your work. And as a condition of this contract, you will agree to follow our rules and regulations. So if someone violates the rules and regulations, they do what? They void the contract of employment, which means, yes, they can be suspended, they can be disciplined, they can be fired because that employee, right? In our case, Lexi broke the contract. She violated the contract because she violated the terms of the contract by not following the employee code of conduct. So if you're starting a new job, do not take the employee code of conduct and don't be a meme. Actually read it because it is the terms of your contract. And if you break those terms, all bets are off. So yes, Netflix is well within their right to suspend, terminate, discipline, whatever they want to do, because I assure you, they have a code of conduct that says that employees cannot do what these employees are doing, which means these employees are in violation of their contract with Netflix. And this violation can put their employment in jeopardy. Okay. Hello to Robbie Privileged. Hello to Black Skin Media, Black Media. Hello to Tyrone Underwood. Thank you for the compliments. All righty. And Robbie Privilege says something interesting. So, how does Chappelle's comedy violate, but the backlash from cuties didn't cause any action by Netflix? So, a lot of people have been talking about the fact that there, was this huge protest over Dave Chappelle, right? As we know, but there was not the same reaction to this Cuties movie. Now, if you don't know what Cuties is, right? If maybe you missed it, Cuties was a movie that was on Netflix, and it was about, I believe the girls in Cuties were 12 or 13 years old, I think. And it was about them becoming some sort of dance troupe. But I never watched Cuties, by the way. But my understanding is that it was a very grown, very adult like film, and that it included these girls dressing in very adult like manners and doing very adult like things that were just not appropriate for their age, right? And there wasn't an outcry as to that. So a lot of people have been saying that they think that this whole outcry over Dave Chappelle is skewed because they don't see the same outcry when things like cuties are put on Netflix. Food for thought, right? So now let's talk about wrongful termination. Okay. So let's say that one of these employees were actually terminated, right? So we're actually fired. Now we know that they probably would be in violation of, their employee code of conduct and that led to their firing. But let's say one of them felt emboldened and said, "No, you know what? I want to sue." Hmm. Well, the question becomes, well, what would that employee need to prove to be able to do so? Right? So let's do that. Before we do, hello to Kiki or Kiki of '05. I don't know, but hello to you. And Nappy Yankee says that Cuties is still on Netflix, by the way. Interesting. Hmm. Okay, so now, as Nappy Yankee says, please like, share, and subscribe. All right. So let's talk about wrongful termination. I'm going to share my screen per my usual. Alrighty. So, wrongful termination is the potential legal action that an employee has when they are fired from their job and they feel, right, for whatever reason, that their termination, their firing just wasn't right, that it wasn't legal, right? So it's called wrongful termination. That's the cause of action. So as you can see, we are here at the LII, which is one of our favorite tools to use, right? Okay, so wrongful termination of fired employees claim that the firing breached an employment contract or some public law. Okay, so now you see, in order for someone to file a wrongful termination suit, they have to allege what? That them being terminated either violated a contract they had with Netflix or some public law. Now, from what we've discussed, it's not very likely that the Netflix employees could allege that Netflix broke some type of contract with them, right? Not very likely. But perhaps they could allege that a public law was violated. Now, what law would that be? I know you're wondering, all right? I know those wheels are turning, the wheels are spinning. So, allow me. If one of these employees were to be terminated, right? And let's say one of the terminated employees were actually someone that identifies as a part of, and I'm not saying it to be disrespectful, I'm just saying it because I heard that Miss Algorithm prefers this, right? So let's say one of the terminated employees was a part of the alphabet community, right? Was actually a member of this community. Well, that person might actually be able to sue for wrongful termination because that person might be able to argue, hey, listen, I was being put in a position in which I felt harassed in my workplace. I felt discriminated against in my workplace. And these feelings, these things that were happening to me that led me to feel harassed and discriminated or discriminated on, there we go. Still waking up, everyone, created a hostile work environment. Okay. So let's talk about that a little further. So let's say, for example, like I said, this employee is a part of the alphabet community and they work for Netflix, right? And now this Dave Chappelle special is on Netflix. And so it's being discussed amongst coworkers. It's maybe being played in the office. Is it? I don't know, but let me set the scene. Okay. Now, this employee can say, well, this is discriminatory rhetoric against me. This is rhetoric saying that I am discriminatory against African American people. This is rhetoric saying that I don't deserve to be called the gender that I choose. And not only is this rhetoric harassing me because it's making me feel unsafe in my workplace, right? It's also discriminatory against me because it's encouraging other people to look at me differently, to treat me differently, right? That is the argument that an employee who is a part of the alphabet community that is perhaps terminated could use to say, hey, I was being harassed in my workplace. I was being discriminated against in my workplace, all coalescing to create a hostile work environment, which is clearly in violation of the laws of our country. Okay. So that is the argument that could be made to create what, the burden that needs to be met to even bring a wrongful termination suit. Okay. So let's take it a step further. Now we're not going to get into the employee contract, okay? Because we already know that more than likely that is not the argument that any of these employees would be able to make. So here we see if basing the claim on a public law, the plaintiff must show unlawful action. Just like we were saying, right? Such as illegal discrimination or retribution for whistleblowing. So we discussed what? Illegal discrimination. Okay. For example, the DC Court of Appeals allowed a wrongful discharge claim to proceed when the employee had been fired for refusing to break the law. Okay. And then we see some other examples. So that kind of gives us the gist of it. Now, remember, the LII isn't, as I told you before, it's not for if you're trying to go to law school, right? It is if you are someone who does not have in-depth legal knowledge and you just kind of need a quick summary. You need a quick understanding of something, okay? So I am in the chat. Hello to Rockin' with the Truth. Hello to Indigo Forever. Hello to B Buccaneer. So how are we doing thus far? Do any of you have any questions, comments, thoughts, or concerns about this whole Dave Chappelle debacle and about wrongful termination? In the meantime, I'll take a water break. Definitely got to take some allergy meds after this. I'm starting to feel the congestion. Okay, so QT1 says, I would argue that an employee broke protocol by barging into a meeting and causing disruption and harassing other employees and putting them in fear. Interesting. So, yes, if in fact there was an employee that barged into a meeting, that employee probably most definitely, allegedly violated their employment contract because probably within the code of conduct, behavior like that is not permitted. All right, so Thomas Smith NYC says, under the circumstances, do employees have standing? Again, if the employees can allege that they were being discriminated on and harassed, then yes. Because remember the whole line of logic that we just walked through, right? You need an employee who can establish harassment and discrimination, right? Which can also be used to argue for hostile workplace. And those things can be the support that employee would need to actually bring a lawsuit. Oh my goodness, Kiki, you and I are on the same page. Kiki says, I'm still waking up, so I'm slowly digesting the info. I get it, Kiki. I was, as I said on my community tab earlier, I have been feeling that way since I would say about last week. When you hit that burnout and you're just like, it's like one of those wind up toys. After you've wound them up and it does all the dancing and everything, and then it's like, That has been me from last week to now. So I'm right there with you, Kiki. I'm still on the part, and I'm still trying to get myself back up. Thank you so much, Diva, for shouting out my Cash App. As you guys know, it is always appreciated if you so choose, although it's never required, right? And if you do send a Cash App and you do not want me to announce it on live, just put NA in the description and then I won't announce your Cash App. Okay, so you don't have to publicize it if you don't want to. All right. All right, from Lexi. Oh, by the way, hello to Asaru Amunre. All right, so Lexi says they don't have to prove it, just saying they're upset. I also saw a video of one protester claiming getting more pay would fix the problem, which sounds like they're trying to twist Netflix's arm. Okay, so let's dive into that, Lexi. So they do have to prove it, right? But remember, the Dave Chappelle special is right there on Netflix. So if someone is arguing that that special, as I said, harasses them or discriminates against them, the special itself is evidence. Now, to prove that they felt harassed or discriminated against, right, they would want to, assert that somehow these things affected them, which would be partially covered by that person being a part of the alphabet community, right? But then also, they would probably want to bolster their claim with some sort of psychological evaluation, some sort of psychologist or psychiatrist who could testify that, yes, I treated this person and they underwent emotional distress after having to deal with this special at their job. All right, QT1 says that is why they were terminated. It had nothing to do with social media posts or discrimination, according to the info so far. They barged into a work meeting. Aha. Okay, so QT1 is saying that from what she has heard, allegedly, these employees were actually terminated for the barging into the meeting, which makes sense because I'm sure that there's some rule that they cannot do that. Okay. Nicole's Thoughts says, liked and shared. Thank you, Nicole's Thoughts. That is very, very kind of you. All right, everyone. So listen, keep them coming. If you have questions, thoughts, concerns about this Dave Chappelle debacle, in a minute, we're going to go over just a few little housekeeping matters because there are a few things that I want us to kind of, I guess, discuss as a group, right? I do want to grab my cell phone. Let me do that. I, of course, still didn't put it on silent, although I thought I did. Okay, QT1 has a question. The question is, California has at will employ. Oh, I clicked the wrong comment. But I do want to address this. Spottum Shottum says California has at will employment. Netflix does not need a reason to terminate them. Now, Spottum Shottum, you've made an interesting statement. So, is it true that with at will employment, a person can be terminated for any reason? Yes, that is technically true. However, a person still cannot be terminated for an illegal reason. So here's an example. Netflix could fire Spottum Shottum because Spottum Shottum copied the wrong piece of paper and that's not the piece of paper they wanted. You're fired, right? That's at will employment. But Netflix cannot fire Spottum Shottum because he's Hispanic. They can't do that. At will employment or not, a company cannot fire someone with an illegal reason for the firing. Get it? Got it? Good. All right. QT's question. Well, they have to prove that they had to view the special as a part of their job. So I would say, in my humble opinion, right, that to make the case more viable, that employee should prove that somehow they were forced to deal with this content, whether it be that they were forced to view this content, whether it be that they were forced to deal with the statements that Dave Chappelle made within their capacity in their job, right? I would say to have a viable case, yes, the employee needs to prove some sort of requirement that they deal with this content somehow. Now, what exactly that would look like, it would depend on the employee and depend on their role in the company, right? But also remember that a lot of things in the law are gray. So that is why I always say, in my humble opinion, because in my opinion, yes, I would think they would need to take that step of really proving that they had interaction with this content, but maybe not. Maybe you roll the dice and you get a judge who is a lot more sympathetic to employment cases. And maybe that judge says the fact that it exists is enough. You never know. Hello to Black Anonymous. Black Anonymous. Dave Chappelle and the Netflix debacle with The Closer and a lot of the statements that he made, and now employees being terminated and suspended based upon them protesting Netflix. So what we're discussing is, can an employer do that, right? What's the law behind that? Okay, Black Anonymous is making a very good point. So Black Anonymous says employers will sometimes manufacture reasons to terminate people so it doesn't look like they fired them for illegal reasons. Right on point, Black Anonymous. So unfortunately, there have been instances in which employees will say, I know I was fired because of my race. I know it. I know it. But the company will turn around and say, no, I didn't fire, Black Anonymous because of his race. I fired Black Anonymous because he had a deadline to have a report submitted to me by October 25th at 6:47 p.m. And instead, he turned it in at 6:48. Does it sound ridiculous? Yes. But is it legal? Yes. because at the end of the day, an employee has the duty of doing what they are expected to do within their job, right? So, yes, there have been times when people have alleged that they feel that they were fired for some illegal reason, but the company comes up with a legal reason. And then it is what it is on that, right? Now, here's the exception to those things. Let's say Black Anonymous says, you know what? I know they're saying that they fired me because that report was a minute late, but I don't think so. I think it's because I'm Black. And then Black Anonymous has a talk with Spot'em Shot'em. And Spot'em Shot'em says, yeah, I'm also Black. And they did the same thing to me. They gave some cockamamie reason, but I think it's because I'm Black, right? And then Spot'em Shot'em talks to Amare Shaker. And Amare Shaker says, yeah, same here. I was fired with some cockamamie reason, but I think it's because I'm Black, right? And then you get a group of people who come together and say, Netflix, you may have come up with these legitimate reasons for firing us, but we can prove that there are people of other colors who were not fired for these legitimate reasons, and that you only targeted us as a group and fired us for these legitimate reasons, really because of our skin color, right? So you see that? So, an individual probably would not be able to overcome a legitimate reason for firing, regardless of how that individual feels. But a group of people who can also point to employees of other colors and other ethnicities who did not get fired for similar conduct, now you're in a different ball game. Okay. Thomas Smith says, I don't think Netflix had a culture of discrimination, and that would be hard for employees to prove. Okay, you never know. It's all up to opinion. Okay, you never know. Alrighty, so as I said, there were some housekeeping things that I wanted us to discuss, right? So we're gonna do that. We're gonna have my cell phone is acting strange, of course, but we're going to have some conversations about some of these housekeeping issues. So let's get started. The first thing I want to discuss is something that I posted in the community tab earlier. So let me go ahead and flip on over to that. So there was an Atlanta attorney who was fatally, I hope fatally is an okay word. You guys really, Miss Algorithm is too much for me to duck and dodge today. Okay. So there was an Atlanta attorney who was fatally shot by her lover in her Midtown condo. Okay. And I posted on my community tab to let me know if you all wanted to discuss it. And I see most of you said, yeah, you want to have a conversation about that. Right. So that is actually going to be up next. Right. And then I see that you all also, well, actually, this is what we're going to discuss. I see that you all also voted to discuss the Grandmaster Jay indictment. So, if you have to choose between discussing the Atlanta attorney, right, who was fatally shot by her lover and all of the circumstances surrounding that, or doing a breakdown of Grandmaster Jay's indictment, which one would you choose? So put a 1 in the chat if you would like to see a video about this Atlanta attorney, and put a 2 in the chat if you would like to see a video about Grandmaster Jay. I'll take a sip of my water while I let you all vote. And thank you all so much for bearing with me today. It's been a bit slow moving today, and I'm gonna get back into the groove here. But I'm also allowing my body and my mind to rest. Okay, so it looks like most of you want to discuss Grandmaster Jay. Okay, so here's what I think we'll do. I think I will discuss the Atlanta attorney over on my podcast. Okay, so over on my podcast, we're going to discuss the Atlanta attorney. And oh look, my sister is calling me by my sorority name, my line name, which is Eloquence, by the way. So that's what I think we're gonna do. We're going to do. Let me put her comment up. Thank you, Amare. Beautiful picture, by the way. Okay, so that is what we will do. Our next live will actually be a breakdown of the Grandmaster J indictment. Okay, so that will be our next live. But over on my podcast, which by the way, if you're unfamiliar with the podcast, check it out in the description box. Okay. Um, as you can see, I haven't been on there this week, just like I haven't been on here this week, right? Remember, I've been resting. But my next topic to tackle on the podcast will be this Atlanta attorney being fatally shot by her own lover in her condo. Okay, so we're going to tackle that on the podcast. Okay. Diva Divine Light says, what is the podcast? You know what? I'm going to drop the link for you all in the chat. Now, mind you, you can watch it on Spotify. Watch it. You can listen to it on Spotify. You can listen to it on Anchor. You can also listen to it on, I think, Google Podcast, Pocket Cast. Anywho, I am going to copy and paste the link to the podcast right here in the chat. Okay. So that's what we'll do. So, when will we next be live? That's the next question. We're going to figure that out. I'll be out of town later on this week. So, that's going to be a bit rocky, everyone, but I think I'm gonna see what I can do. I'm gonna see if I can work out either, because you all know I'm totally willing to keep my commitment to you. And a lot of times I go live and I'm not even, home. I'm like out and about, or I'm on a trip or whatever, right? So we may have to do that. So we may just go ahead and cover the Grandmaster J indictment later on this week or this upcoming weekend. Although we won't have our usual setup, right? So it'll be another one of those times where I'm like, bear with me, okay, not the usual setup. And then we will cover the Atlanta attorney over on the podcast. That podcast episode will be out tomorrow. The podcast is a lot easier to record than this whole setup, right? It's audio, so it's a lot easier to record. If you are a member of the channel, right? Shout out to one of my members that's here, Negus Roselle. You are also getting new membership content this week. For those of you who are not a member but you're interested, you should check it out. We have more personal conversations over in the member section. We talk about family, we talk about life, we talk about internal challenges and conflicts. And one of the things that we're going to be discussing on the membership channel this week is how to get out of a funk. If you're in a funk, if you're in a rut, what do you do? How do you get yourself out of that? I'll also be vlogging my travels in the membership section of the channel. So listen, if you're not a member, you should consider it. You absolutely should. Negus Roselle says, "Yay, yes, I will be doing some vlogging. You'll be hanging out with me on the plane a bit in the airport, right? Checking out the scenes, seeing the sights, all that good stuff. Okay. So listen, we are at just about an hour thus far. I see Nappy Yankee made a comment about a judge. I want to highlight that. So Nappy Yankee says, what about the Tennessee judge that sent all of those children to juvenile jail with made up charges? Interesting. So I'm going to have to look into that. Let me say something about the law in general, though, and also about juveniles and juvenile charges. So, first, statement about the law in general. Usually, oh, did I do the Umar Johnson? Yeah, I did. I said it 3 times. Someone who becomes a judge has practiced for about 10 years. Okay. That's the usual. That's the norm. Uh-oh. Hiccups. That's the usual. That's the norm, right? Of course, you have sometimes when that norm is altered a bit, right? And a lot of times, whenever you see someone becoming a judge before they practice for 10 years, it's because they are an elected judge. They're not an appointed judge. And elected judges, for those of you who don't know, are really like politicians. They run in their district and they are actually elected, right? So they're not appointed by anyone. Why am I telling you this? Here's why. If in fact this Tennessee judge, right, was doing what is being alleged, then it depends on whether or not she was elected or appointed, right? Those two things determine, well, that one thing determines what kind of reprimand is even possible, right? Because a judge who is appointed, it is a whole different, it is an entirely different process to try to reprimand a judge who is appointed, because an appointed judge has to be impeached. Now, an elected judge, that's a different situation. They're elected by the people, they can be voted out, they can be reprimanded a lot easier, et cetera, et cetera. So, I will look into that. But if in fact what is being alleged is true and this judge wasn't being reprimanded, it may be because she was not an elected judge, right? Or it may be because she was able to hide her misgivings under seemingly legitimate charges, right? So for those of you who are unaware, a lot of people who are either prosecutors or judges are accused of being really, really hard on juveniles when it comes to things like truancy, right? And so you can feel on a personal level that it's unfair to charge someone with truancy, but legally, if that law is on the books, they can be charged with truancy. Case in point, the Vice President Kamala Harris has a interesting reputation when it comes to truancy, and she allegedly went very, very hard on students and minors when it comes to truancy. And some people were really upset about it. But at the end of the day, the law is on the books. So how it is applied sometimes really comes down to what's going to be deemed acceptable in that area. You know, really what people will be okay with. Um, Someone mentioned my earrings. Thank you. These are one of my favorite earrings. Nappy Yankee, you said you sent me an email about it. Ooh, okay. Sometimes emails get lost for me. I'm so sorry about that because I have so for example, right now I have 50,000 emails that are unread. Yeah. Sometimes they get lost, okay? No love lost, but I will look into that. All right, Health Light says she would like my cash. Well, I'm assuming that you are a woman, Health Light. I'm so sorry if you're not. It's just because I see a woman's picture. But this is my Cash App, Health Light. My Cash App is $Felicia P. Okay, so that's my Cash App. And I see someone saying they don't want theirs announced. That's fine. If you send me a Cash App and you do not want me to announce it, put an NA in the chat. An NA in the chat. Put an NA in the description, and I will know that you do not want your Cash App announced, and I won't tell anyone. Okay. King Simon Media says I need an assistant. Ugh, King Simon, if only you knew. In addition to the 50,000 unread emails, 182 unread text messages, King Simon. If you only knew how badly I need an assistant. That's part of why I'm so exhausted. But oh, Health Light. Okay, so I wasn't wrong. Okay, so yes, Miss Health Light, it is $Felicia P. Alrighty, everyone. So listen, it's been fun per usual. And today we discussed rights as an employee, right? Employee code of conduct, the contract between an employee and an employer. And we also discussed wrongful termination all through the lens of Dave Chappelle and his The Closer stand up, which sparked these Netflix employees losing their mind and walking out and getting suspended and busted into meetings and this whole kerfuffle, right? So all through that lens we were able to explore really employment law. Okay, so as you know, here on Empowered Esquire TV, we love to empower you and arm you with legal knowledge. I hope you feel empowered and amazing, because you are. And listen, if you need to rest, you're not wasting time. Rest is just as important as anything else you do. In fact, it's one of the most important things you do, because it is your way of telling yourself that you love yourself. All right. So if you're catching this on the replay, give it a thumbs up or a thumbs down. I mean, listen, Miss Algorithm don't care, so neither do we. And tell us, what do you think about this Dave Chappelle debacle? Do you think these employees should have been disciplined? Or do you think it was a little too much? It's gone a little too far? Let us know. Alrighty, I'll see you guys soon. Remember, next up is Grandmaster Jay and his indictment. And check out the podcast where I'll be discussing the Atlanta attorney who was unfortunately fatally shot by her lover. May she rest in peace. All right, see you all soon. I'm getting back to resting. See ya.